All right, and helping us to further unpack this and look at the mental health of our police officers is clinical psychologist Stefanie Bove. Stefanie, a great pleasure having you with us on the show. Welcome. Thank you so much for your time. So what potential mental health issues do you suspect might have led to such a tragic incident? I mean, we've seen quite an increasing number of similar reports among law enforcement officials calling to question their current as well as available psychosocial support services.
Hi, Alicia, and just a word from me to say thanks for having me on your show this Sunday afternoon. You know, hoping to share some insights with regards to a very serious concern affecting many of our population. You know, one imagines that you would never suffer this level or degree of violence or harm from those members of society who one would expect are earmarked as protectors, essentially. But, you know, the small and the short of it is that mental health conditions, which can and do affect many of us, are also significantly affecting our police officers. You know, with their exacerbated levels of elevated stress, PTSD, symptoms of complex PTSD, and compassion fatigue, which are often experienced within this arena or this expertise. Mm-hmm. You know, the fact that police officers are almost always confronting these traumatic situations in the high-risk nature of policing shouldn't be normalized to the extent that we begin, to ignore these incidents and events that may have a very significant impact on their psyche, and that the memories laid down by these events can have a long-lasting effect. Very often we see this identified in their social withdrawal, emotional dysregulation, and I guess in our country specifically, the situation's made a lot worse by factors like poor working conditions, inadequate support, overwhelming and unmanageable workloads, and a lack of control over their working hours, which obviously would then also contribute to the mental health deterioration and burnout we see a lot in the police force.
Absolutely, Stefanie. And studies indicate a high prevalence of mental health conditions like you've just mentioned, your PTSD, depression, as well as stress, among others. But due to the demanding nature of their work as well as rising crime rates, how does an individual then, or those around them, actually pick up the subtle signs, Stefanie, as well as symptoms, so as to speedily get the assistance that is necessary? And how easy is it to spot some of these signs?
Well, I just want to say, just before starting, just answering your question, it's not as simple as that. Just working a lot with medical aids in my profession, I had some conversations with PolMed, interestingly, which is the medical scheme that is offered for many police officers. And they reported in their 2024 mental health report that some 17.7% of police members have sought treatment for a lot of their mental health difficulties, ranging from depression, anxiety, as well as substance abuse and bipolar disorder. This is a really small number, and that raises concerns for me regarding how those that are not having sought treatment are actually coping with their intense emotional load. So I think one of the things that's important to look out for is, first and foremost, a change in characterology. So essentially, when characteristics that are pervasive patterns of behavior show themselves, they're predictable, they're sustained. When we see a change in that character or massive character shift, with someone who is generally happy-go-lucky or contained starts to develop social withdrawal, emotional dysregulation, potentially because these police officers are often armed outside of working hours as well, one needs to be very clear that anything that represents a shift in the character that they can normally predict is a sign for concern. When you see somebody withdrawing into themselves, spending an inordinate amount of time sleeping, changes in appetite, maybe they're eating too little in respect of how they usually eat, maybe they're eating too much, those are signs that need to be looked out for. Potentially also shifts in mood. Some people just expect that police officers increased signs of depressed mood or low mood. We also see mania in a lot of police officers. So suddenly wanting to kind of sell their house, gambling loads of money away. Those are all telltale signs that someone may be struggling under these circumstances.
Let's talk about that report, in fact, that you just mentioned, Stefanie, because I actually went through it as part of my research, and I actually came across this very interesting revelation that SAPS just in August last year, when they presented to the Portfolio Committee on Police, these shocking stats of 33 suicide reports among young police officers were reported in the 2019-2020 period. 30 the following year, and a further 39 the next financial period, with 38 homicide, suicide incidents, which is what we're witnessing in this case that we are focusing on today as of 2019 and 2022. So this is quite shocking, Stefanie, because at the time it was actually put forward that there needs to be special attention or focus on employees' health as well as wellness interventions by SAPS. But still, there's been little to no changes in this regard.
Most definitely. And I've got some updated stats for you from our Minister of Police, Senzo. He recently presented data revealing that SAPS has actually faced a troubling rise in suicide attempts and completed deaths by suicide in the last 3 years. So there appears to be, in my calculations, a 40% increase in completed suicides in the 2023-2024 period when compared to the 2022-2023 period. So that's 64 deaths by suicide completed last year when compared to the 45 deaths the previous year. What they noted in our current financial year is only 6 deaths, but I don't think that stat is updated at this point. So if we talk about, in my mind, having worked for correctional services for some time in my training, SAPS has some really good resources that are available. My concern is that there is still, stigma is still rife in our country with regards to police officers being able to utilize the services that are offered to them. And, I think we can't ignore the fact that there is also unconscious psychodynamics at play here, where those that are often in a position of being able to help do not believe that they need the help themselves. So I think all that sets up essentially is a case of the wounded healer. So I do think police officers need to be encouraged to use the service.
All right, Stefanie, I think I might have lost you there. That is Stefanie.
But most importantly...
Oh, she's still there. Yes, very quickly, Stefanie.
Yeah. I'm just going to go through quickly. The SAPS has an employee health and wellness service, and these services are tasked with addressing these issues. But there are still concerns remaining around their effectiveness and resources. The consistent availability of these kinds of workshops. But the department does provide support to its members. These include hospital admissions, rehabilitation, long-term counselling, trauma debriefing, as well as work integration programs. And some of the programs that I'm aware of, just having worked with them myself, is obviously a number of proactive wellness initiatives. And I want to stress that we can't just respond in crisis situations. We need to work on a more preventative level as well, because it's all fine and well that we kind of reflect on these tragedies, but our work needs to be on trying to prevent these.
Absolutely.
So the proactive wellness initiatives that exist include the Choose Life program, which encourages officers to seek help after traumatic events. There's also the trauma management program, which addresses symptoms of ongoing trauma. And then also the emotional and psychological readiness sessions, which often prepare police officers for potentially stressful events.
All right, Stefanie, unfortunately, we're out of time. We're going to leave it there. I mean, I was just going to raise that particular issue. 621 employed health and wellness employees that are servicing a whopping 187,278 police personnel within the SAPS. So that ratio is quite horrendous, actually. Stefanie, thank you so much, of course, for your input this afternoon. That is Ms. Stefanie Bove there. She's a clinical psychologist weighing in on the mental issues, the mental wellness of our police officers.